few more minutes about truth in labelling. So with this movement, when a lot of people find out about things like intensive confinement and sow stalls and battery cages, the next kind of step of progression is often to free range. And when we rely on free range, we rely on packaging and labelling. So we see something on the shelf, it says free range, and we kind of assume that means it aligns with our ethics. Now the problem is, more often than not, that labelling doesn't actually meet our expectations. So in Australia, until relatively recently, we had no definition of what it meant to have a free-range egg, for example. And that's really problematic because it means it's in the hands of the producers to decide whether or not their products actually constitute free range. It's also confusing for consumers, and animal protection groups weren't very happy about it. So there was a really big push to get a definition going. It was a really positive opportunity, but unfortunately the process got hijacked by big agriculture and industry. So now we do have a definition of free range, but it really departs from what we expect when we think about free range. So previously, free range was kind of understood to be a type of farming with a very low number of animals involved. It was actually 1,500 hens per hectare. Under this new legal definition, it says free range is anywhere up to 10,000 hens per hectare. So that's almost 6 times as many animals in the same space. So it really doesn't match what a lot of people think of as free range. And then the second issue is that before this definition came in place, we all assumed that free range meant an animal actually went outdoors on an ordinary day. Under this new legal definition, it says that they just have to have access to the outdoors, which is a really subjective test. And it means that the producer or the farmer can label their product as free range, and we can pay a premium for a product where that animal has never actually been outside. So for animal welfare, it's pretty shocking. There's a huge number of animals in a small space in unnatural environments that don't actually get to have any kind of autonomy. For small producers, it throws them in the same competition as these really big, mass-intensive producers. And for the consumer, it means we have no idea what it is that we're buying or what the labelling on the products mean. And then the next thing to consider is there really anything out there that aligns with what we expect with free range? Because whenever you have an egg industry, there's elements of it that can't be fixed by law. There's elements that can't be regulated away, and this is what we call inherent cruelties. So in terms of egg production, I'm sure many people are already aware, it's the way that the industry deals with male chicks, for example. So there's 12 million male chicks every year who are killed within a few days of birth. And it's a pretty gruesome way that it occurs. They come trundling down a conveyor belt. They're roughly sorted by gender. The females are sent off to become laying hens, and the males are killed by carbon dioxide gassing, or they're killed by maceration, which is just when they're thrown down a spinning blade and they're ground up alive. And that's really appalling. And we had some footage that came out for this happening in New South Wales recently. There was a massive public outcry. People were horrified to learn that this is a standard part of egg production in Australia. And then the second part is when you take these females and they are about to head off to be reared into egg-laying hens, and because they live in these really unnatural environments in quite crowded conditions, they take out their frustration through pecking. And so to avoid pecking each other, the industry response is to take off a piece of their beak. So when they're chicks, a third of their beak will be removed, either with a hot iron blade or with a laser. And this is done without any form of pain relief. And we're kind of programmed to hear this and think that it's just like cutting our hair or our nails. There's actually a lot of scientific research out there that shows a hen's beak has the same number of nerves and pain receptors as we have in our lips. So it's a really appalling part of the industry, and that's the same regardless of whether those hens are going to be raised in cages, barns, or free-range systems. It's more often than not, they'll all come from the same hatchery. So you really have to take these kinds of things into account. And it's pretty shocking that there's no transparency for these kinds of practices, and it's really not reflected in our labelling. We see free-range, none of this is on the packet. When we see a picture of hens roaming in a field, we think life must be pretty good. But we have to take time to educate ourselves, to learn about what standard industry practice is, and decide for ourselves if that aligns with what we're willing to contribute to. So it's really important to educate ourselves and get informed, and in that way we can be part of